welcome to episode 51 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary, with Kristen
and Catherine, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club, where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hey, Kristen.
Hi, Catherine.
So, I guess a lot of the books, possibly even all of the books we've read so far, are set in fantasy worlds or magical worlds, or set in the real world but have magical element type things.
Yes.
I think so.
Which we enjoy.
Yes. So this book isn't, and I do think it's the first one. I could be wrong. But so we just thought it'd be fun to talk about what we like about books that are just set in the normal world without any magical or fantasy elements to them.
Right.
So, Kristen, what do you like about books that are set in the normal world without any fantasy or magical elements?
So I find this question very difficult because examining books that I read and have read are mostly fantasy books.
Yeah,
I think you're on the same page with me. Like, neither one of us are big into those books where you're just reading a book about a normal thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the last normal book I even tried to read, apart from this series, I talked about it on this podcast ages ago. I got it off Libby, and it was about this boy that had a crush on met another boy, had a crush on him. And I thought it was going to be normal, but then in the end, it did end up having a fantasy element because the kid ended up being like a Human Torch and then passing that on to the kid he had a crush on.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, this took a turn. I find even when I try and source out books that are sort of normal world and not fantasy, it ends up fantasy anyway.
Yeah, I do find that happens a lot too. That's the same thing that happened in the book I was talking about, I think last week, One Last Stop. I was going into it and I was like, okay, this is going to be a regular old romance, YA-ish romance book, I think, is what they kind of are. And it just completely, I was like, what the fuck is going on? I was like, am I crazy? What is happening? I didn't think that there was fantasy in this, but there was. So it had a scientific explanation, but it's not something that would happen in the real world.
Yeah. And same thing happens too. James Rollins is another author I really like. His adult stuff. He does have some YA stuff, but his adult stuff. And I was thinking, oh, well, I like those, and those are normal world. But then I think about it, and no, they have friggin' Yetis and crazy ass ancient beings that have been frozen in glaciers, and then they wake up and they kill everybody. So that's not even a normal world event, right? That's still technically fantasy.
Yeah. I guess it could happen in our future. Is that what you were going to say?
Well, I was going to say, unless you're one of those people that believe in Yetis and abominable snowmen and lizard people that have been frozen in ice for thousands of years.
Yeah. Well, I guess you can never say never.
Never say never, 100%. But so I was like, shit, even that's not fantasy. Or even that's not fantasy.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, Nora Roberts. I love her. And hers are normal. But then I'm like, no, because the ones I like the best are all her magic-y witchy ones.
Oh,
so
yeah. The only ones I've ever read by her, I read the first 1.5 books in the series where they are witches. It's real world, but they are witches. And then the other one I read was her new one where she pops into an imaginary world.
Yep.
So
with dragons.
With dragons.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
However, what I do enjoy about books set in the normal world, if I, I'm not saying I haven't read any, I do enjoy, obviously it is easier to see yourself in them. Maybe not as fun, but easier. Yeah. Right? You can picture yourself. They're obviously a lot easier to relate to in that way because, you know, have haven't experienced magic. We haven't experienced, I've never seen a dragon myself personally.
What?
I know. So, um, you know, there are obviously books set in the normal world are way easier to relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And I find actually might be I don't know if it's a cop out answer, but like I find they're obviously way easier to visualize the physical setting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a lot of books, like they're talking about this imaginary world, and it's helpful if they put a map in the book.
Yeah.
But if there's no map, and then you're like picturing this like imaginary world with all these neighboring countries together, I find that really hard sometimes. So
Yeah.
obviously, if it's set in like New York or Toronto or like, you know, Paris, I can visualize those things. Like
Yeah.
I can or like if it talks about a country, like, oh, we're going to Morocco. I know where
Mm-hmm.
that is in real life.
Yes. Yeah.
So
I
like,
guess. Yeah.
you know what I mean? I find that way easier. I don't have to use my imagination as much, and I don't have to think
Yes.
as hard about it.
Yeah. I just find that like I just don't like the map doesn't really help me much, and I just don't deal with that issue. I just read the book and I'm like, they're going somewhere, who knows?
Oh, one more thing.
Mm.
And I don't know if this is, but I also find obviously if it's set in the normal world, there are normal names for things.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
how long was I calling Kaol from Throne of Glass Cole?
100%. Yeah. That's
Called
what I
him
thought
Cole
it was forever.
for years. Not actually
Yeah.
years, but like until you listened to the audiobook and was like, nope, she describes it as Kaol.
Yeah.
And now I find it really hard to reread and like correct myself.
Mm-hmm.
So like pronouncing names of things is really
Yeah.
hard.
No, I know.
So at least normal world stuff, the names tend to be normal.
Yeah. And things you've heard of usually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm the same. Like I don't really read a whole lot of books that aren't fantasy. There are a few that I do enjoy, and like I like a lot of them for a lot of the same reasons as you. Obviously, it's easier to imagine the things that are happening because you're not trying to imagine what a dragon or a wyvern and what the difference like.
Yeah, what is the difference? Do we know?
It's based on how many feet.
What? Wyvern have more than 2 feet?
No, like dragons have 4 feet and 2 wings, and wyverns have 2 feet and wings, no arms. I'm pretty sure. Something like that.
Oh.
I don't know if that's right, but it's something like that. I'd have to look it up to be sure. But then there's one that just has wings and no feet at all, and that's named something different.
Ooh.
Like a giant...
Like a snake with wings.
Wings.
That does not seem practical. How does it land?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's obviously easier to imagine things happening. Also, I find that like generally the plot is based on somebody overcoming something in their life or like overcoming a struggle. It's like real world problems that are relatable.
Yeah.
So I do find like if you are going through something, you can try to find a book based on the same thing and read a character going through what you're going through type thing. So like I do like that part of it because it just makes you feel like you can do it too, or like you're not as alone in it. So I do think that is a really nice thing about books. Like obviously this book is a lot of mental health related, and like that's helpful to a lot of people. And like I know that there obviously are books. We talked about Akhtar and Akamath, and like they do also do a good job with mental health, but this is just more real world, obviously, because it's set in the real world. So I kind of like that part of it. But like I said, I really don't read a lot of them. It's usually like romance or like the one-off time that I find a book that I'm like, oh, I like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. So just as a heads up, we are not a spoiler-free zone, and things might get a little bit saucy. So it is our third week doing Solitaire by Alice Oseman, and we're doing chapters 24 of part 124 to part 2 9. So last week kind of ended a bit tumultuously.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Tori and Michael and Lucas and Becky and Nick were in Truum looking for Charlie, and they kind of walked towards Charlie and Ben yelling at each other, more like Ben yelling at Charlie. Mm-hmm. And then Ben punched Charlie square in the face. And Tori really struggled with it.
Yeah.
She was not okay. Charlie was physically pretty much okay afterwards, just a little bruised, I think. But Tori was mentally not okay. And last week we kind of went into like what actually happened between Ben and Charlie is from like we know because of the Heartstopper comics, really. But I don't think that it's ever really explained in this book.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. So
essentially, Ben and Charlie were in a secret relationship. Charlie broke it off when he met Nick, and that pissed Ben off. And they had a few interactions that were not so savory. And Charlie essentially said that he wasn't going to tell anyone that Ben was gay. Ben was like, oh, I'm not gay at all, blah, blah, blah. And that we thought that would have been the end of it.
Yeah.
And I guess it wasn't.
No. But I feel like it ends this week. I don't think it comes up again. Really. I can't remember what happens.
I think Ben gets his comeuppance.
This week.
Yeah. So yeah. I think it doesn't, not that it doesn't need to be addressed. Like, I feel like people need to tell friggin' adults shit.
Yes, 100%. Completely agree.
Like, Charlie was assaulted by this person twice. Like, tell an adult.
Yeah. But that's not what you do when you're a teenager. So
I guess not.
Anyway, so this week starts, and Tori is I'm gonna say depressed, for lack of a better word. I think that's the best word anyway. But so it's the next morning, and she wakes up to her phone ringing, but she ignores it. And then the house phone rings, and she ignores that too. She says she stays in bed until 2:30 when her dad opens her door and kind of like mutters about how she's still in bed. She says she feels sick, so she goes downstairs, and her mom kind of just asks if she's going to change out of her pajamas, which is like, does her mom not realize that she's feeling so shitty? Like, you can tell. I don't know.
I want to say that I feel like these parents, like, they have two children that end up with, like, problems.
Mm-hmm.
And a part of me wants to be like, how could you not realize? How can you not see it? It's right in front of your face. But then at the same time, like, that is what everyone says. Like, everybody says that, like, oh, I just didn't see it. Like, and we always say, how could you not see it? But that is so common to people. I just didn't see it.
Yeah. I just feel like a lot of the times when people are like, I didn't see it, they're not living with them. You know what I mean? Maybe. I don't know if that's true, but like, anyway, you also have to think, because like when people do have mental health issues, a lot of times it can be genetic as well. So like maybe they also had issues when they were in high school, and like our parents' generation were just told to suck it up and get over it. Kind of our generation was as well, but our parents' generation never did talk about it. And like, I
No.
feel like our generation, we do talk about it more, but that's only recent. So I do think
Yeah.
that it's very much like not brought up. Like they could have issues too, I guess, but we don't really know.
Yeah. I don't know, like when your child stays in bed like literally all day, every day, and like is not reactive, like and then you obviously are going through mental health with your other child. I just feel like you should be able to put two and two together.
Yes. I do know like teenagers do stay in bed forever though. Like that's just a whole thing about teenagers.
I was never allowed to do that.
I wasn't either, but like it is a I don't know. It's commonly said that teenagers stay in bed until like 12 or 1 or later or whatever.
I guess.
But yeah. Um yeah, so it just I don't know. It just kind of rubs me the wrong way, but I guess that's just her mom. um so her mom did ask if she was going to change out of her pajamas, and she says no, she plans to stay in them until her death. So that's also a bit of an iffy response, and her mom just leaves. Her dad does ask her what's wrong. She doesn't really answer, so he just kind of like continues the conversation one-sided, and he tells her she has to try if she wants to be happy, and that her problem is she doesn't try. And she just thinks of how she does try and she has been trying. And like, I 100% get what he's saying.
Yeah.
Like, you do need to try. Like, if you are having a bad time or you're depressed or something like that, like you do need to try, but you can't just say you need to try. Like you almost need, I think this is just an issue for teenagers and people in general anyway, but you need to give people actual feasible things that they can do. Like, I know when I'm not feeling well, I can't just be like, oh, try to be happy. I need to work out. I need to shower. I need to clean the
Mhm.
house. I need to talk to someone or read or leave the house or eat. Like, there's a bunch of things that can like help me out of it. But I've taken the entire last 10, 12 years of my life to figure those things out
Yeah.
and to figure out what helps me when I am feeling depressed. So, like, to just be like, try is shitty advice. Like, she needs tangible things to do that could help her out of it and actual tools. And I think that's more of a thing now that people are realizing, like, everybody needs, but I don't think it's helpful to her to just say, try. You're not trying.
Yeah.
Because, like, being in her head, we know she is trying. It's just she doesn't know how to make herself feel better.
I
So
do. Can I just say, like, I do think that she is trying. However, I also think that she brushes a lot of stuff off because she doesn't want to bother.
yeah,
Like, not that the answer is try more, but like, I feel like she turns down a lot of stuff that could make her feel better, that could help her.
yes,
Like, no one is going to get her out of that room.
yeah,
So, like, if being in the room feels bad, if then like no one is going to force her out of that bed except for her.
yes. I just, yeah, I just think that like correlating the things that make you feel worse takes a lot longer than it should.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
she is 16, but like I think I was probably in my 20s before I even was like, oh, lying in bed doesn't make the depression less shitty. Like,
Yeah.
I actually need to get up and do something. So, like, I do think it's a lot to expect. And like the problem is when you are feeling depressed, that is all you want to do. And then you feel shitty for doing it. And then it's a
Mm.
whole cycle. So like, I don't know. I think we need to be teaching people tools better than what we already are. I do think it is getting better now than it used to be, but still.
Yeah. And it's hard because, like, yeah, she is, and we don't, like, we're implying and inferring that she is depressed without an actual, like, diagnosis or anything like that. But,
Yeah.
like, I think obviously she needs to talk to someone about her thoughts and feelings, but obviously that's really hard when you're in the throes of what, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's just
And I
hard to
feel like,
talk.
yeah, I feel like part of her issue is not only her issue, but like the family is very focused on Charlie right now. So like I get that she probably feels like she can't talk to her parents about issues because she's not the problem child right now and they're focused on him, kind of thing. So I feel like that could be like she
Yeah.
doesn't want to burden them even more. So maybe they don't realize how bad it is inside of her head, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shitty situation.
It definitely is.
Um, Tori asks her dad where Charlie is, and he says that he's at Nick's. And then he just like kind of laughs about the fact that Charlie ended up hitting himself in the face with a cricket bat.
Yeah.
As we know, he did not. He got punched
Yeah.
in the face by Ben. So not great.
But again, like, this is a key moment when we could have said, well, no, actually, he got punched in the face by his ex-boyfriend.
Yeah.
But no one does.
No. And like obviously Tori is having some like residual issues today because of that whole incident. Like I kind of feel like if that didn't happen, maybe she wouldn't be feeling this bad today. Not that it's anyone's fault other than Ben's that it happened, but like I can see her have like actually having gotten out of bed earlier and done what she had planned to do today if that didn't happen. Her dad then asks if she's going to go out and she says no, and then he asks about Michael because obviously she hung out with Michael last weekend. And then he asks about Becky and he kind of says that she hasn't really been around in a while. And Tori just doesn't really say anything, and her dad says teenagers and rolls his eyes. And like I do get it.
That, like, yeah, it's like that sitcom-y thing. Teenagers.
Yeah. And like I 100% understand it, but I feel like it probably feels a bit dismissive to Tori, but then I also can't be mad at him. Like it does seem like he is trying.
Yeah.
He just doesn't really know how, which is like the major case with a lot of people that are depressed.
Well,
Most
and like,
people don't know how. Yeah.
and like, what's he gonna do? What is he gonna fight an answer out of her? Like, if she's not saying anything, he can't be like, well, tell me, where's Becky? Like,
yeah, although our parents would have.
Yeah, they would have.
But I'm not saying that was right either.
No. Our parents were like intrusive, had to know literally every minute of my life. That's my parents were anyway. Like I couldn't go anywhere without them being like, where are you going? Who are you going with? Are the parents going to be there? And they would have to like talk to the parents on the phone. Yep. Like that was my upbringing from when I was like even as a high school student.
Yeah. And it's so weird because like that was my upbringing, but then also when I was in like middle school, I'd just get home and be the first person home and just sit at home and do whatever I wanted for a few hours. And it's like two ends of like anyway, it's just wild.
Yeah.
So Tori goes back upstairs and she tries to call Michael. And she kind of like in her head blames her dad for bringing him up. And it goes to voicemail. And then she feels shitty again and like a narcissist because like obviously Michael has a life outside of her. She's just very much getting down on herself.
Yeah.
And then she tries to Google Michael Holden. But what, like she does a very poor job of it. Like why wouldn't you put his town or like anything else. She just is like, oh, it's just a common name. Can't find anything. I'm like, that is so weird.
Yeah.
He does end up calling her back though and asks her what's up. And she can hear a lot of noise on his end. So she asks him like where he is. And he says he's at the rink. And she asks if it's a practice, but he says no. Then he says he didn't tell her about it, but it's like a national youth speed skating semifinals competition. So like that sounds very important.
It's a big deal.
Like nationals, very
but also
important.
they have enough
Semifinals,
speed skaters for that. Like I feel
guess
like
so.
you would have like 6 across the whole country. Like
No, I guess not. Like I'm sure their Olympic team has more than 6 people probably on it.
I guess. Point.
It's just not a sport that we see a lot of, but like
Yeah.
I think there's just more than we know. Michael says he has to go, but he'll call her after, and he asks her if like he'll see her later because they're going to the party, and she says yes. And this kind of snaps her out of her funk, kind of, because she's like, this is a huge deal. It's not just a tiny competition. And she also realizes that like he was going to ask her to come when they were at school the other day when he asked what she was doing on Saturday. And she says she told him she obviously had plans with Lucas, and then she decided to avoid Lucas anyway, which I didn't really realize it was a conscious decision. I thought she just completely forgot because of how like in her head she was about the day before, but maybe a bit of both.
But I feel like she also already missed the plans with Lucas.
Yeah. Oh, she did.
Like she stayed in bed. The way I read it, she stayed in bed all day, not because, oh geez. She doesn't say that like, and maybe that was what her phone ringing was, but like,
yeah,
they don't.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. But like, I don't know. She doesn't think about Lucas when she's in bed and like, oh, that's probably him, but I'm not in the mood, so I'm going to avoid it.
Yeah.
So the way I sort of perceived it was more like she was just so in her head and did forget about Lucas until this moment and is like, oh, well, the day is gone anyway, so Michael's thing is more important. And since I've already blown him off, I'll just ignore it and avoid it.
Yeah.
But like, I just never considered it intentional up until this point.
Yeah. And like, so I kind of figured she had to know because in the morning her phone wakes her up when it rings, and then her house phone rings and Charlie comes in to be like, hey, that's for you. And she ignores him.
Yeah.
So like, I felt like she knew it was maybe Lucas, or I don't know. But then it was just weird because she did use the word avoid here. And I was like, I wouldn't really have called it that. You were just avoiding everything, I guess. So if you're avoiding everything, then sure, you are avoiding one person.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, she jumps out of bed then, and she like goes immediately to the rink on Charlie's bike, and she thinks she probably missed everything because she has no idea anything about like these types of competitions, which I'm like, same. She finds a spot in the rink where she can see over the glass, and she watches as 8 boys fly around the rink. And on the second lap, she spots Michael, and he spots her, and he watches her, and like she can tell he's kind of surprised that he's there. And then something changes, and Tori can feel everything in her drop to her feet as Michael pulls into the lead. But then, unfortunately, another boy pulls ahead, and the race is over, and Michael came second. Tori watches Michael leave the rink, and she knows something is off with him. Like, he punches a locker, he starts kicking the helmets, he pulls on his hair, and she is just kind of shocked because she's never seen him act like this, I guess. And she kind of thinks that like nobody around him notices him being like this or cares enough, according to Tori. So she like barges over towards him. And when she gets there, he's tearing up paper. And she says, "Yes, Michael Holden, tear that fucking paper." And he finally like turns to her, and she, in like, I guess, almost a happy voice, says, like, "You came second. That's amazing." But he says that he didn't qualify. And she says he looks like he's almost about to cry. So like, I like feel so bad for him here, and like completely understand why he's feeling like this. Like, that is so hard not to make it.
I wonder if like if it were me, I would like immediately feel bad because I feel like I would have, if I were Tori, I would feel like I squashed his like concentration because he saw her and took notice, and then all of a sudden he didn't win.
Yeah. I kind of, I don't know how I would feel about all of that either, but he did speed up after he saw her, so I don't know like how he feels about it, but I could see her being like, "Ah, fuck, I screwed him up."
Yeah.
I like maybe he would have been faster earlier.
Yeah. I don't think he would have. I don't think he thinks that way, but I think if it were me, I would feel that way. And she doesn't communicate later in the book that she feels that way.
No.
But I also found this like, and obviously it's just, you know, we're developing characters here, but I found this outburst of his really uncharacteristic. Like, it's not something I would have ever expected from him as a character.
But I think that just goes to show how little Tori really knows him outside of school. Because, like, I think to be this competitive in a sport and to be this good, you kind of have to be, not that you have to be angry, but you have to care about winning.
Yeah.
And you have to be, like, dedicating the majority of your time, I guess, to the sport. So, like, I can see why he's frustrated for sure, and I kind of think that like it just shows more about how Tori doesn't know him as well as she thinks she does.
Yeah.
Anyway, Michael tells her that he thought he might have imagined her, and she asks him, she asks him if he's often angry, and he just says always.
It reminds me of that line from the Avengers with the Hulk. It's like, 100%. You want to know my secret? I'm always angry. And then he hulks out.
Yeah, exactly that. He does say though that like sometimes other things override the anger, I guess. And again, this just brings me back to like, what is his home life like? Yeah. I kind of need to know, but I don't think we ever find it out.
No.
He asks why she isn't with Lucas, but she tells him that that's not a thing, and she doesn't like Lucas like that. And she says she notices something like hope on his face, but she can't tell. And I'm like, what? Why even say anything in this? What is happening?
It seems like they're dancing around feelings, but at the same time, they're not.
Yeah.
Like, they kind of are dancing around feelings, but like, they're just friends.
Yeah, it's interesting, I'll say. He does ask her if she's going to tell him, like, it's just a competition and it doesn't matter. But she says no, and she says it does mean something. And that, like, makes Michael smile at her. And it kind of makes me wonder if, like, most people in his life kind of dismiss this.
It's just
like
a
his
game.
Parents probably. Yeah.
And, like, I'll be honest with you, I would probably do it to my kid. I'd be like, you're really upset, but, like, it's not the end of the world sort of a thing. I would totally do that because I would hope it would make them feel better to, like, put it in perspective. Like, your life is not over.
Yeah.
You just lost a race.
Yeah.
But actually, this conversation is making me realize that maybe that's not the right thing to say.
Well, it depends, because, like, he's already said to Tori, and I don't know if his parents know this, but he said that this is what he wants to do with his life. So it isn't, like, it isn't just a competition. And I think it's different, like when you're a 16-year-old and you're at a national event is a bit different than like when you're a smaller child and you're just like getting into things and you have competitions. Like it is a bigger, I do think like this is a bigger deal right now than, but it's hard to know what to say to cheer anybody up ever. So
yeah, it's true.
So they go to the meetup that night, and Tori is kind of a bit surprised that it's just a house party, but I also don't really know what else she expected. And she kind of says something about like she thought it would be like an actual meetup of like the people. I guess
I kind of did too.
Yeah, I don't know, but like everyone's gonna be there. I didn't think we'd like figure out who Solitaire is or anything, but yeah, she said something about like a PowerPoint presentation, and it just kind of made me laugh. So the house that they're at is like completely unfurnished and clearly not being lived in at the moment. So I'm like, did they just break into like a model house and like have a party there? Like,
yeah, that
seems like a terrible idea.
But like, so then who was the first to show up and break in and get the party going? Like, it had to have been Solitaire, or was it just some randos that were like, oh, it's this place. Oh, they must mean for us to have a party. Let's party.
Yeah.
I'm so confused with the logistics of this.
Also, you'd think that Tori and Michael, wanting to know who Solitaire are, would have gone and like scouted it out beforehand to see who the first person was.
Yeah. They're not very good at solving mysteries, are they?
No. So the party seems huge and like there's a lot of people around, and they spot Lauren and Becky, and they are already smashed, or as they like to say in the book, pissed, which kind of confused me. There's at least one point when I was reading it, she said that they were pissed, and I was like, oh, they're pissed off, and she meant just very, very drunk.
I think that's it's a British thing.
Yeah. But there was one point I was just like, is she pissed about something? And then I just got confused. But anyway, no, just drunk.
Yeah.
And Becky is excited to see them, and she calls them Sprolden. And Lauren says that she thought they agreed on Maury or Tickle. Anyway, these are ship names for Tori and Michael. So I'm thinking it's Tickle.
I think Maury would be the best for everybody.
Except for it just reminds me of Maury, the
Maury
talk
Povich?
show. Yeah. But yeah, Maury or Sprolden, I think. And then they kind of comment that their names don't work as well as, and then they list 4 other ones, and I just had to say them because I love most of them. But it's Klain, who I actually had to look up Klain because I don't watch Glee.
No, me neither.
Kurt and Blaine from Glee.
Which apparently their relationship was super problematic.
Yeah, I did see something about like one of them assaulted the other one, but I honestly have never watched the show.
Well, apparently, again, I haven't either, but I read a lot of articles and stuff. So apparently Blaine used to bully quite severely Kurt for being gay, only for him to turn out gay and then them being together. And then I think Blaine ended up cheating on Kurt with somebody else that sexually assaulted him or something like that.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was a whole mess of a relationship.
Yeah, that's not great. Yeah. I did have to Google it, and it was very hard to figure it out because I just put in Klain ship name, and like it would be about like actual ships. But anyway, instead of relationships, the next one was Hermione. So obviously Hermione and Ron, which you love. And
Hermione,
yeah.
I love them.
And then Destiel is Dean and Castiel from Supernatural.
I can't. Only because I ship Dean with me. So I can't therefore ship him with Castiel.
Yeah, I also don't ship Destiel at all in any way, shape, or form, but I did like that it was a Supernatural reference.
Yeah.
So, and then Merthyr, which is obviously Merlin and Arthur, which I 100% ship.
Do you?
Yes.
Did you watch the show?
I watched a few seasons of it, but I didn't finish it.
I also shipped Arthur with myself, so
That's fair.
especially with that actor, because I
Yeah.
thought he was real handsome.
I feel like he's too much of a pretty boy, but that's also like the type of character he is. So I feel like the actor looks better than the character, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yes.
yeah. Anyway, so obviously Becky and Lauren are kind of a lot. And they just say that like they came because it's a party. They don't really care about Solitaire, and apparently the drinks are free and it's snowing hot guys. I'm like, I wish it was snowing hot guys here instead of what it is snowing, which
is snow.
Snow. a
Yeah,
lot
guys,
of snow.
We're in the middle of it's a snowstorm right now. I'm on a snow day.
Yes.
So
So
it's actually snowing snow.
yeah. And a lot of it. Like after this, I'm going to have to deal with the car, and I would rather jump off a cliff.
Me too.
So anyway, after that, I guess they kind of leave Becky and Lauren, and Tori and Michael end up just mingling and going around. And a girl named Rita asks Tori how Charlie is after the fight. And Tori just says, like, he's fine. He just has a bruise. But, like,
how does she know?
Yeah, it's kind of, I think the point of it is to kind of be like, the rumor mill has sent this around immediately, which is not surprising in high school. They end up talking to a bunch of year 13s about Solitaire. And this is like Michael's main mission is to like find out, obviously, who Solitaire is. Mm-hmm. And one of the year 12s says it's bound to get wild later. They just need to keep checking the blog.
Okay.
And he's like, how do you know that? Like, what's going on? And I'm guessing he's just guessing. I don't think this year 13 has anything to do with it, but who knows?
Yeah.
Tori then says she looks at the newspaper floor and sees a headline of 27 dead and a picture of a burning building. I just don't like, is the floor just done? Like, is the house not done yet and there's newspapers on the floor?
I feel like it was an abandoned house. Like, to me, it doesn't feel like a new build that hasn't been moved into yet. To me, it feels like someone moved out of there and nobody has moved in.
Okay, but she did say that there's like a lot of art there. So it's just confusing. I don't really understand. And I don't know if like a newspaper floor is like a British thing, and like is everything every time something happens, I'm like, is that a British thing?
Do we just not understand it due to context?
Yeah. I also kind of wondered if like it was like a stab at foreshadowing.
Yeah.
But I just didn't understand what a newspaper floor was, and it kind of sounded like it was an actual thing. Anyway, so after all that, Tori ends up outside with a bottle of something alcoholic, and she's on a lawn chair, and she feels like a middle-aged alcoholic husband. And it kind of makes me wonder if, like, does her dad have issues with alcohol, or like does her grandfather, like, is there something there? Because it's just such a specific thing to feel like.
Yeah.
Michael has apparently disappeared somewhere, but she can see Nick and Charlie in the window and they're making out, and she just thinks of like how they're really in love, which I kind of think is sweet. Tori finally gets up to go find Michael, but she like guesses her drink was strong because she ends up just wandering around not knowing like where she's going and what she's doing. So she's a bit drunk. Yes. And she sees Lucas, but she doesn't know if he sees her because he kind of just like walks out of the room without talking to her.
Yeah. I mean, granted, like I know we're seeing things from Tori's perspective, but 100% if I was Lucas, I would also be pissed off at her.
100%. Like, I completely would too. And like, she didn't even text him to be like, hey, sorry, I
Yeah.
was having a hard day, or like anything.
Yeah.
Eventually Michael finds Tori and takes her with him outside, and he like puts his hand around her wrists and they walk. And Tori says she doesn't know where they're going, but she likes his hand around her wrist, and it's like it belongs there, which is sweet.
Do you know what? I almost feel like they're platonic soulmates.
Yeah, makes sense.
Like, just, I don't know. I just feel like they make each other feel better, and I don't know. It feels like, I don't know. That's just how I feel.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. They do get outside, and Michael spins and asks Tori to dance, and she's like a bit in shock and has a bit of a coughing fit. But they stare at each other for a while, and she thinks he looks so nice. And asking her to dance like makes her think of prom and weddings and stuff like that. And then she's like, whoa, I'm jumping to conclusions here.
Yeah.
But Michael grabs both of her wrists and then kneels down to beg her to dance. And like, what he actually says, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, so he says, please dance with me. I know that dancing is awkward and outdated, and I know that you don't like doing stuff like that. And if I'm honest, neither do I. And I know that the night isn't going to last very long, and soon everyone will just go home, back to their laptops and their empty beds, and we'll probably be alone tomorrow, and we all have to go to school on Monday. But I just think that if you tried, dancing, you might feel for a few minutes that all of these people, none of it is really too bad. Which just is like,
it's a nice quote. Yeah,
it's so nice. And it's like also kind of like what we were saying before about like trying and stuff. Like, I think this is an instance where he's giving her a practical thing to try instead of just being like, try,
cheer, like, or those people that be like, cheer up.
Yes. Which is like so our parents' generation.
Yeah.
She gets down on her knees too, and she kind of like leans towards him, also semi falls on him, and says yes. And he like picks them both up to their feet, and they go over, I guess, closer to the DJ, and the Smiths are playing, and Michael is pumped. But it kind of is a bit odd to Tori because she says like apparently the Smiths are super popular on the internet right now. So she asks if he has a blog, but he kind of just laughs her off and is like, I don't need a blog to like the Smiths. And she decides that she doesn't really care about that. She just wants to dance with her one and only friend, Michael. Which I thought was interesting that she said that at this point, that Michael is her one and only friend.
Yeah, considering like Becky still exists. And as of right now, they're not like, yeah, they're a bit disconnected, but like that's about it.
Yeah, right? I found that kind of odd. So at like 12:15, she goes to pee, and she says, rumor is that Solitaire is going to post something at 12:30. And when she leaves the bathroom, she sees Lucas, but he looks at her and then runs away, which is fair. And she goes to follow him to apologize about today, which I think is probably a good idea.
Yes.
But he goes to talk to Evelyn, and Tori just decides that they must be a couple. And she also says that they're both dressed like hipsters. So
I know, because two people cannot be
platonic.
Yeah, like they're matching. They have to be together.
Mm-hmm.
But also, she obsesses over this a little bit. Like, why does she
100%.
care?
Yeah. Yep.
So
I agree. So she just goes back outside, and it's snowing, and Tori thinks about like how beautiful the snow is, which I disagree with her right now. But then she sees Becky against a tree kissing a guy, and like on closer inspection, she realizes that it's Ben Hope. And Tori is in shock.
Yeah, like, but rightfully so. Like, she legit said, oh, Becky's gonna have to break up with him now because he just
threatened and beat up my brother
and punched him. Like,
yeah.
And she's like, oh, she'll have to break up with him now. And then all of a sudden she turns around and they're making out against a tree. Like,
yeah, it's not great. And she literally is in shock. She drops her drink and just stands there, and she's just staring at them. And then Ben opens his eyes and sees her. And then I guess Becky realizes, and she turns around and sees her too. And then Ben just like runs inside. So he runs inside, which I just thought was kind of like not great. Like, I know it's Becky's friend. She has to kind of deal with it on her own, but like, it just, is he afraid of Tori? I don't know. It's just weird. Anyway, so Tori goes over to Becky because Becky just looks at her as if to say, what? And Tori ends up losing it. She tells Becky she's a nasty bitch, and she used to think that Becky was just forgetful, but now she knows that she just doesn't care. Becky starts to like get actually sad about this and almost starts crying. And Tori asks her to go on and justify it, tell her she's just her naive friend whose sad life makes her feel better about herself. And then Tori says, like, all of that is true, but she does know when someone's being a nasty bitch. And she knows that Becky doesn't care, like, I guess, about her at all. She says that Becky's voice sounds sober when she asks Tori to calm down, and she tells her she's being a nasty bitch now. And, like, it's not a great time for a relationship. And apparently Tori's also, like, not sure if she's yelling, so I'm sure she's yelling at her. And, like, Tori even realizes that, like, this isn't great to be hashing out in the middle of a party while they're both drunk. But, like, this is what happens, I guess.
I mean, it's true. Like, this is what happens when you drink in general, right?
Yeah.
Shit goes down.
Yes. Especially when you can't handle it and you are a small child. Tori ends up telling Becky that she's selfish and has betrayed her and that she should just delete herself from her life. Which I kind of found that part a bit funny, but the rest of it is like, she really did. Like, this really is a stab in the back.
Yeah, but it's like, cheesy.
Oh,
delete me from your life is just
100%.
Cheesy.
It is. It's just kind of funny. But yeah, I do think I understand where Tori's coming from. Obviously, like, it's your best friend, and Tori and her brother are as close as two siblings can really be. So it's a bad scene. Tori kind of spirals a bit because, like, this is her best friend and she's just so hurt by it. So she walks back to the house and she's crying. But she hears everyone freaking out. So she realizes, like, it must be 12:30. So she hauls up the Solitaire blog and there's a new post. And the post essentially calls for, like, retribution.
Yeah.
And it says that Ben Hope is a known homophobe who hides behind his popularity. And it says that he deliberately injured a year 11. And, like, obviously Ben is not a great person, but I don't think that this is the answer here.
Yeah.
And also it kind of makes me think that, like, the person behind Solitaire doesn't really know the extent of what Ben is hiding, or they probably would have said something about that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You know, it's probably not Nick or Charlie behind Solitaire.
Yeah.
So,
but I mean, did we ever think Nick or Charlie was Solitaire?
No, they're in the wrong school. It'd be very hard for them. But you never know in these books. It's like Gossip Girl.
Yeah,
like it's like, and also Pretty Little Liars. You're like, there's no way they had this planned out from the beginning that this would be the person. They're just pulling this shit together at the end.
Yeah.
I never watched Gossip Girl, but anyway. So Tori ends up outside and there's two boys holding up Ben as others punch and kick him. And Tori kind of sees Nick and Charlie, and she can tell that Charlie wants to intervene, but Nick holds him back. And Nick calls 999, which is 911 for us Canadians.
Yes.
So it's just an emergency.
Yeah.
Line.
Yeah.
Tori kind of thinks that like she couldn't stand up for Charlie against Ben before, and now Solitaire is doing her job for her. Mm-hmm. And then she starts to kind of think back to what Michael said about Solitaire being about her, I think last week or the week before. He said that like it's a lot of it is related to things that she likes.
Yeah.
But then she laughs and she feels selfish thinking that, because she knows that nothing is ever about her, which is like not great.
Yeah.
And then Tori kind of starts to panic because like people are just like laughing and like happy about all of this, and no one is stopping anybody from beating the shit out of Ben. And she thinks that like if this were a movie, she would try to put a stop to it, but it isn't. So she just moves away from the crowd, and she can hear sirens blaring in the distance. Michael grabs her arm and tells her that he'll take her home, but she says no and tells him to stop pretending he cares and that she doesn't have any friends. And then she just runs. And she says that she's chasing the demons, and she thinks that she's not the hero. And then she's like not sure if she's laughing or if she's crying, and she thinks maybe she doesn't care anymore. And then she thinks maybe she'll die when she's 27. Which 27 is like a common age for struggling artists to die at.
Yeah. I think wasn't it Amy Winehouse, Kurt Cobain, Brian Jones, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison.
I think she has a bit of a, not obsession, but a bit of a like, she knows a lot about Kurt Cobain because he died the day she was born.
Yeah.
So like it is very much something that is something she knows a lot about, I would say.
Yeah.
So then part 2 starts, and it starts with a Donnie Darko quote. Like, I watched Donnie Darko, but I don't really remember it.
Sid made me watch it once, and I was like, this is too weird for me. Like, movies in my mind need to be like, I don't know. I prefer movies to be entertaining. I don't like movies that like are like a mind freak and like make you think about things. I don't like it. So to me, Donnie Darko was just too weird.
Yeah, I guess I watched it in high school, and I don't really remember what happened, but I remember it being like one of those movies that like people watch to be like, I'm different.
Yeah.
Just our generation thing.
Alternative.
Anyway. Yes. Which, like, I was totally that girl, so I watched it for that reason.
Yeah.
I just don't have a memory anymore. Anyway, Tori kind of starts thinking about Lucas on this next part, and she says that, like, when they were younger, he was a crier, and it happened most days in primary school. Like, she kind of just thinks about, like, that's probably why she was his friend, because she didn't mind the crying. And she says he wouldn't cry over anything in particular. He would just start silently crying. I'm like, what the fuck is his home life like?
Yeah. I know. All of these people are like, they all have shit.
I know. It's wild. I'm like, did none of the teachers reach out to anybody? Like, this is not good. She just is reminiscing still, and she says they used to play together, and then when he cried, they would just read together. And she says that was back when she used to love reading. It's just so weird. What was wrong? I don't know.
I don't understand how you used to like reading and then you don't. Like, I don't understand how you could not love reading anymore.
Yeah, I think that is depression,
I guess.
She Oh, yeah. She says she always felt her best like when they were together, and she hasn't had a relationship like that since then. And then she thinks, well, maybe Becky in the early days.
Yeah.
So that's kind of sad. She does say that she also saw Lucas once since primary school on High Street when she was 12, and he said that he sent her an Easter egg in the mail, but she didn't get it. And then she made him a card shortly afterwards with her email on it and a drawing of them, but she never did send it. So it's like classic like friendships that like when you're not together every day anymore, it's really hard to keep them going.
Yeah. Which is normal. Like I don't think we should like, I don't know. I feel like not that we are, but I feel like a lot of people like villainize like not staying in contact with like your friend when you were kids, but like that is, I feel like it's just a natural part of growing up.
Yeah. And I feel like almost once you're an adult, it's more so being like, oh, you can reach out at any time. Like it's never too late to reach out to somebody and then just be like, hey, what's up kind of thing.
Well, something that I will remember for like I don't think I'll ever forget it. So when I was in my late teens, maybe my early 20s, I remember somebody in their 30s telling me, or maybe late 20s, like we were just in two different parts of our lives. Yeah. And she said to me that she only sees her friends like 2-3 times a year, maybe 4. And I remember thinking, oh my God, like you have no friends. And she was like, no, they're my really good friends. It's just that's when we get to see each other. She's like, it doesn't lessen how good of a friend we are. That's just what happens when you get older. Yeah. And now, like, she's not wrong.
Yeah.
Like, obviously we see each other more.
Yeah. But like my high school friends.
Oh, I never see my high school friends.
No, exactly. Like any friends that I had that I was like, this is a friend that's going to be my best friend forever.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I think my best friend from high school, I text her on her birthday. She texts me on her birthday. On my birthday, I mean. And that is it.
That is the extent of it. Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
So.
Yeah. And I think like that is normal, especially like I feel like it's gotten even worse with COVID. Like I don't see anybody anymore, which I'm fine with.
Yeah, it's completely okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so Tori's thinking about all of this on a Monday after the party, as she's looking for Lucas to apologize and to try and make her life better. She kind of thinks that she's no better than the kids doing nothing at the party. She should be trying to make her life better. And he was a good friend before. So like maybe working this out will make her feel better. Especially since she said like she felt good when they were friends. Like it was a good friendship. So I can see why she thinks that like being his friend now will fix all of her problems. Not that she said that, but you know. She has another like thought of the day on her blog, and it is, what is the point in studying literature? Which is just like,
because it's fun.
Yeah, an interesting question. Why are we doing this, Kristen?
I don't know.
She also says that like Becky and her lot haven't spoken to her all day. And she can't find Michael at school either. And she assumes that he's done with her because she ruined everything when she like ran away from him. She also gives us an update on Ben. She says he didn't have to go to the hospital, which is probably a good thing. And she says some people feel bad for him and others think he deserved it. But she was talking to Charlie about it all. And Charlie feels like it's all his fault that it happened. But Tori was just like, it's not. It's Solitaire's fault. I also think it's not to blame him, but it's partly Ben's fault for being a dick.
Yeah.
Not that an entire school should beat up one person. Ben was a dick.
Yeah. He is. And like, it's definitely not Charlie's fault in any way, shape, or form.
No. And like, yes, obviously, I do think Solitaire went too far. Like, I don't think an entire school should beat up one child.
No.
But I also don't think that Ben should be popular still either.
No.
So, anyway, so I guess Tori goes about her day and she's in English class, and Kent is the English teacher, and he holds her back to talk about her essay, and he tells her it is very angry, and she says she hated the book, and he responds that he got that impression from the essay. So the essay was about the heroes in Pride and Prejudice, wasn't it? So he reads a bit of it, and I loved it, but she starts the essay with, "I'm sorry, Mr. Kent, but I have not read Pride and Prejudice. I disagree with the very first sentence, and that was enough for me." Which, like, I think that's the point of the book, though. Like, Elizabeth disagrees with the first sentence of the book, too. Like,
yeah. And, like, I also feel like it is a product of its time, too. You have to look at it with a completely different lens.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Obviously, it is not a truth universally. Like, the very first line, it is a truth universally acknowledged that any man in want of a good... No,
any man in possession of a good
fortune must be in want of a wife.
Yeah.
Obviously, maybe at the time, that might be a little more true than it is now.
Yeah.
Not that it was 100% true back then, because, you know, I don't think it was 100% true.
No. But yeah,
otherwise,
it was...
I don't know. Otherwise, I just feel like they would all get married as soon as they hit, like, 20. The boys would be like, oh, I want a wife now.
And, like, I'm sure some of them were, but, like, the whole point not the whole point of Pride and Prejudice, but a big part of Pride and Prejudice is that is exactly what her mother thinks, and Elizabeth disagrees with it. So, like, it's kind of funny. Like, if she actually read the book, she might not feel that way.
Yeah.
But she gets into more stuff in her essay, and she kind of, like, gets to the conclusion that Darcy is the hero of the book. Like, she does say, like, a typical hero is brave, confident, and dashing. Mr. Darcy is shy, haunted by himself, and unable to fight for his own character, but he loves, and I guess that's all that matters in the world of literature. So,
yikes.
Yeah, she's a bit... she doesn't like books, as we've already heard. But Kent is kind of like... It's interesting that she identifies with Darcy, because he says most students think that Elizabeth is the stronger character. And he kind of tells her that he assumes she isn't a feminist. And she says, like, yeah, I am a feminist. I just don't like this book. Which I just think that, like, I can understand relating to Darcy, but I do obviously think that Elizabeth is also a strong character. And I do think, like you said, it is a product of its time. And I get why a teenager might not love the idea of reading this book. So I obviously did, but not everybody does.
I really liked it when I read it, but I also like it more the more I read it as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it grows on me more and more. So I think that, like, maybe a teenager is not exactly the right audience for Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah. A teenager in this day and age, like a teenager in Jane Austen's time, is probably exactly the book is for.
Yeah. Well, geez, they're getting married at 15 over there.
Exactly.
Over there.
Over there in the past.
That's exactly what I meant.
Over there.
Over there in the past.
Yeah. Kent just kind of smiles at her and tells her not to write so colloquially in the exam. And I'm assuming it's because, like, the exams are, like, public exams where it won't be him marking it. So it is probably good advice. He then brings up all of her marks and he says she isn't doing as well as like her marks last term kind of projected. So like she was getting A's in her classes last year and now she's getting D's or something like that. And like she tells him it's because she hates being there, hates being in high school. And he says a lot of people hate being here, but you can't be so defeatist about it. And then she just like rushes off to music class.
I mean,
he's not wrong.
No, like nobody likes school, like junior high and high school. Nobody wants to be there, but you suck it up and you deal with it.
Yeah. And like it'll be over soon and then you can get on with the rest of your life.
Yeah. And she's only got 1 year left after this.
Mm-hmm.
So she's close.
And like, I feel like this is a funny point because like you can tell that Kent does care about her during this conversation.
Yeah.
And he does want her to do well, which just kind of contrasts to how he treats Michael, which we don't really know about that yet, but it's just interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, at the end of the day, Tori finds Lucas by his locker and he's talking to Evelyn, and Quiff guy is what he calls him. He just has his hair like swooshed back into what is called a quiff. So that's what she doesn't know his name.
Lovely.
And apparently the school is super smelly because Solitaire dropped a stink bomb, she says, an hour ago. And she says most people seem to be supportive of this prank, but she thinks it's unnecessary. And I feel like she's starting to get much more critical of Solitaire now after the Ben Hope.
Yeah.
She interrupts their like group and she asks Lucas why he's ignoring her. And he tells her that he isn't, even though he clearly is.
Yeah.
And she asks him again if he's secretly dating Evelyn because they're always together and whispering. But he says no again. And she asks if he's mad at her because of Saturday, but he promises he isn't. So she asks why else is he avoiding her? And she kind of thinks in her head, like, how she's the one who didn't try being his friend before now. She tells him that they were best friends once and she doesn't want him avoiding her. And she apologizes about Saturday. And she says he's one of like 3 people that she's ever been friends with. And he says he doesn't know what to say. And she asks him to tell her why he's avoiding her. He says he can't be around her. He can't do this anymore. And he slams his locker and walks away.
I'm getting really frustrated with him.
Me too. Like, why?
Like, just be honest.
Yeah. But it's too far gone for that now.
Yeah.
She just stands there for a bit and she says she feels like the smell of moldy eggs is intensifying. I'm like, is that foreshadowing? Is this the origin of the scent? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Just curious, I'll say. Curious. Yes. And she says that he didn't close his locker completely, but she doesn't really snoop as much as I would snoop. And like, I don't really understand what the point of her looking in his locker was. Like, she just sees a piece of paper that's like, if you're stressed, try exercise or writing things down. But I'm like, I feel like she could have found more things. Like, I don't understand the point of this scene.
Yeah.
So she closes his locker.
Also, who forgets to close their locker?
Well, he slammed it. He was trying to leave in a hurry.
I guess.
Fuck you, Tori.
Just like, I don't know, make sure your locker is closed, dude. Like, served him right for being, if she did snoop.
Yeah, but like, our lockers were always like, you'd close it and then you'd put the padlock on and close it. So I don't know if like these lockers like can lock themselves or something.
Well, I don't know, because you remember, you always see on like TV shows that their lockers are not like that. They're like, they have the lock built into the lock.
Yeah.
To the locker, sorry. So you would have to like put the combination in and then lift up on the handle to open the locker. And then you just shut it and it automatically relocks.
Yeah. So maybe that's what they have.
Maybe.
Who knows? Very intense conversations about lockers on this podcast. You're welcome. Anyway, so she's at supper that night, and she say that her grandma and granddad are there for the first time in months, and it seems real tense.
Yeah.
She says her granddad talks to Charlie and says he hears that like Charlie's back on the rugby team, and he says that he's lucky they took him back because he really messed them around taking time off. And you're like, ugh.
But like this shocks me because, and maybe it's just who I had. Like my grandparents well, I still have one grandmother, but my grandparents are like really sweet people, and like they would have never criticized me. You know what I mean? Like your grandparents are the ones that sort of love you unconditionally and don't criticize because they love you and they don't have to worry about raising you. Your parents are the ones that criticize you because they are raising you to be the better human.
Yeah.
You know what? It just seems like really uncharacteristic of a grandparent. Now, I know that saying that there are a ton of grandparents that are toxic and say stuff like this, but it's not my experience with grandparents. Like, I'm shocked.
Yeah. I don't really have either of those relationships with my grandparents. So I don't know my grandparents.
You don't have an opinion on grandparents.
No, but it does seem like classic older generation, kind of like when people talk about going home for Thanksgiving and how it's going to be a fight. Like it's classic, like this is what would happen.
I guess.
So I do get it. And I'm sure there are a lot of people that have grandparents that are like this. And there's a lot of people that have parents that are like this too.
Mm-hmm.
So their grandma then says it's been ages since they've seen Charlie, and next time they see him, he's likely to have a wife and child, which, like, Charlie is gay.
But obviously,
so that is not,
they don't.
That is not likely. Yeah. So, the grandparents don't know that. So, like, is that Charlie doesn't want to tell them? Is that his parents are like, they won't understand, so don't bother? Like, it's, or like, did he tell them and they're just completely ignoring it? Is another possibility, I guess. Anyway, not great on all counts. The granddad continues on like the rugby train, saying that like if Charlie ate more growing up, he'd be big and strong enough to be like one of the regular rugby guys. But he says the team does need a skinny guy to run, and it's obviously too late now. But then he blames Charlie's parents for not feeding him enough dark veggies at an early age, which is just such a weird... I just feel like he's all over the place with this shit. Like, clearly, I don't know if he's the mom's parents or the dad's parents.
This sounds like a mom one all over.
Yeah. But it kind of, like, makes you realize, like, whoever's parents they are, they did not have an easy time growing up.
No.
Tori's kind of like eating slowly because of Charlie. She doesn't want it to be so obvious that he's eating slowly. But she pulls her phone out to like check her text messages discreetly. But she has a text, and she had texted Lucas earlier saying that she was sorry. And he responded, "It's fine," but she knows it isn't. And he isn't telling her it. He tells her like, this isn't even about Saturday. So she asks him like, what is it about? And Lucas asks her to meet up tonight.
Yeah.
And then obviously she's still at the dinner table. So they kind of ask Charlie what his plans for school are. And he says he's thinking he'll go to Higgs. But the granddad thinks that he won't get any discipline at an all-girls school. And like, what? There's no discipline at an all-girls school? What are you talking about? Also, there are boys there. It's not an all-girls school in the last 2 years. Like, what is his grandfather even saying? And then he says, what about your friends? Like, you'll be leaving behind Nick. And that's just ironic for him to say. But Charlie says, like, Higgs is a better school. And the granddad just scoffs and is like, what like what school to friendships. And you're like, his priorities are all over the place.
Discipline, but who cares? School,
About
friendship.
education.
Like,
Yeah.
it's fine.
It's so weird. It was just such a weird, like, yeah. Anyway, Tori says that she wants to be excused because she has a bad belly. And as she leaves, she hears her granddad say that she has a weak stomach like Charlie.
Oh,
You're like,
God.
just shut the fuck up. Jesus Christ.
I would not want to, like, I wouldn't want my kids to have to deal with that.
But if you were the parent, like, you would kick them out. You'd be like, if you can't handle being a reasonable fucking person, you're going to need to leave.
Yeah, especially knowing that they're, like, the mental health toll that, like, knowing that Charlie has, like, a fucking mental, like, issue. And he just was, like, he was in a mental hospital. He was in a, like, an inpatient program. And then to let your parents talk to your kid that way, knowing how damaging it would be, like, it blows my mind that
they don't say anything.
Yeah.
And especially, like, it's supper time, which is stressful for Charlie at the best of times.
Yeah.
And now he has to deal with these two people just, well, I don't know. Their grandmother didn't really say anything bad, I don't think. But anyway, it's just so bad. I feel like I would lose my shit at them if I was Tori.
Yeah.
But, like, she's also getting the, like, brunt of it too. So I know she can't really, and then her parents would get mad. But yeah, I really feel like her parents should be doing something about this. Yeah. But anyway, Tori goes to the cafe at 10 to 9 to meet Lucas because they agreed to meet at 9. And she waits at the table until 10:07 when Lucas texts her, sorry, and then has an X at the end, which I guess is just like a kiss. And she looks at the message for a long time and at the meaningless X, and then she just walks home. So he stood her up.
And I don't know, maybe this is just retribution for her standing him up on Saturday. Like, maybe that's all it was.
Maybe. It's just so weird because it's like, why is he so adamant that he's not mad about it? And then he stands her up and then he's like, he's got issues too.
Yeah. Yeah. And he needs to just come out and say what they are because this is not helpful for her at all.
No.
Anyway. So, at school, like, I guess maybe in the next couple of days, they're having one of their assemblies that they seem to have like every other day. And Ben Hope is back at school. I guess he didn't come back for like a whole week. Tori says he's like actively staring at her, which I find a bit creepy.
Yes.
But she says it's not like an angry stare. It's more like he's a bit sad. And she thinks it's because he knows that he isn't popular anymore.
Just so weird. Like, why
it is
would
weird.
He be, like, I feel like the only way he would look at her would be with like anger.
Daggers.
I don't know why he's not angry. Not that I think he has a right to be angry at her, but I could understand him being angry at her, and I just find this whole thing odd.
Yeah, my thing is like, how are teenagers so suggestible? Like, when we were in school, I feel like this would have never happened. Like, there's no way that some anonymous person could say, oh, beat him up because he's a homophobe and he did this. I feel like the majority of people would just be like, yeah, okay, and just ignore it and still be his friend anyway.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think teenagers are so suggestible and so, like, righteous that they would be like, oh my God, a homophobe, none of us are going to be his friend anymore.
I guess one of the differences is, like, he was at a party with a whole bunch of drunk teenagers. Everyone's more suggestible when they're drunk,
I guess.
But then also, like, Like, is it because everybody is defensive of people now? Whereas, like, when we were in school, people didn't care if you were
No.
homophobic.
No.
So I don't know.
So, yeah. Anyway. So she also says that, like, since that party, she hasn't seen him and Becky together. And she hopes that Becky listened to her. Essentially listened to her calling her, like, a bitch a million times.
Yeah.
Lucas is sitting, like, a couple of rows in front of her, and I guess he's, like, looking around, and she catches his eye, and she just, like, stares at him. And, like,
I'm here for it.
Yeah, and she's thinking about how he stood her up and that she's not sad about it. And it's like, you're not really? Like,
why are you staring aggressively at him?
Yeah. She is sitting next to Rita, who hands her a note, and essentially the note is telling Tori that she's isolating herself. And she's like, I don't know why this, she doesn't say it, but I'm paraphrasing. I don't even know, like, why this bitch is, like, giving me her opinion because we're not friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she doesn't even consider her and Rita friends. But, like, obviously Rita does, because Rita sees it. Rita sees Tori isolating herself and is like, hey, you're isolating yourself. Please don't.
Yeah.
And then Tori's just like, we're not even friends.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, so she just takes the note and just, like, holds on to it. And then when they're all leaving for the assembly, she was also close to Becky and, like, slips it into her pocket.
Yeah. I don't know what the point of that was, but
I don't know either. Anyway, she doesn't see Michael. She says she hasn't seen him all week. She's thinking about him. And she keeps going back to wondering why he didn't tell her about his speed skating competition. And I just feel like this is old news. Like,
yeah, but, like, he also asked her what she was doing, and she was busy. So I feel like that's the answer.
Yeah.
You already had plans, so he didn't feel the need to tell you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
She also says, so next period, she always skips. It's the exact same every cycle. It's like her Wednesday last period music class because it's a performative music class. I guess the rest of the music classes, they don't have to perform, but this one they do. So she's skipping it, and she always skips it and does the exact same thing. She goes to the same field and just sits there. And she's sitting on this field, and she sees a bunch of year 7s run onto the field with party poppers. And she's like, oh, no teachers in sight. I feel like this is a solitaire prank.
Mm-hmm.
And so while they're, like, getting ready and assembling and doing everything, she actually Googles Michael Holden again with the town name attached to it, and actually sees he's had a really successful youth speed skating career. Like, he's been national champ, like, under 13s, under 15s, whatever.
Yeah.
So she's, like, shocked but not shocked and, like, pleasantly surprised.
Mm-hmm.
So then the year 7s pop all the streamers, and she says, in spite of herself, because again, we've said that she started to have negative feelings about Solitaire lately since that whole thing with Ben Hope. So she says, in spite of herself, she's smiling at them. And she says it's like the one time she's had a positive emotion towards year 7s.
Which I kind of like.
Same.
Yeah, but I kind of took it like she even looks back and hates herself as a year 7. Like, I just found it kind of funny.
I would, but in fair, I would rather year 7 than year 8.
Oh, yeah?
Year 8s are the worst.
For me. I don't have an opinion.
No. So she gets the bus home, and on the way, Michael finally shows up. He's, like, doing this really, like, typical romance movie thing where he's on his bicycle, riding his bike next to the bus and like trying to see what window she's in. And he does it and like rides next to the bus until she gets off her stop. Like she doesn't like do this grand gesture of like stop the bus or anything like that. She waits until her stop and then she gets off. And they sit in silence for a while, and she sort of wants him to say something. And as they sit, she realizes, shit, he's not going to say anything. So then she realizes, I guess I'm going to have to say something. So she apologizes to him, which is like a really big step for her. And she says she finally realizes that she like wants to hang out with him and be his friend. So that's like good progress for her.
Yeah.
She asks him like where he's been this whole time, and he says it turns out he was suspended, which is wild because he cursed at the headmaster, who is Kent, like the same guy that gave Tori that little chat about her Pride and Prejudice essay. Is also the headmaster. And I actually got really upset at the behavior of this. Like, I don't think this guy's teacher's behavior was good at all. No. So essentially, they called it their mock exam. So I guess it was like a practice exam. And apparently he did that exam, like his mock history exam. And apparently his mark was so low that the teacher was like berating him about how low his mark was, and then thought it was an appropriate reaction to also bring him to the headmaster's office so that the headmaster could also berate him. So like, this is wild to me. Like I've never, ever in my life witnessed a teacher essentially send a child to the principal's office because they got a bad mark.
Yeah.
Like, ever.
Yeah, I think their point was that he isn't even trying, which, like, is so outdated, I want to say.
Yeah.
Like, it's just clearly, and we've already said it before, like, clearly, if he was in school now, he would need accommodations of some sort. Probably to speak his essays instead of writing them or something. But like, it's so extra. And like to go from the teacher being like, don't write so like informally on your publics to Tori, and like, why aren't your grades like what they used to be? Like you used to be doing so much better. Like what's going on? Like what is happening that is making you do worse? Like, can we change it type of thing? And with him, it's like, you're a piece of shit. Get out of the school.
Yes. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, like, we all know he's a bad tester. So, like, here he is getting berated by the headmaster and his history teacher. And he just got so upset that he just tells the headmaster, like, I don't know why this matters. You don't fucking care about me.
And I don't think he's wrong.
No. And, like, at the same time, he cursed around him. He didn't curse at him.
No.
He didn't say, you're a fucker or a fucking asshole or anything like that. He said, you don't fucking care about me.
Yeah.
So that means, he's suspended for a whole week.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Anyway, I feel really bad for him in this moment. Like, I feel so awful. So she confides in him that she's actually been pretty bored all week without him, which is nice. Like, she's really opening up here. And then she tells him what happened with Solitaire, the whole thing with the year 7s on the field. And he points out that it just so happened to occur at the exact place that Tori is every single Wednesday during the 5th period. Is this a coincidence?
I just don't understand Solitaire in this moment. Like,
no. To be fair, I'm a little bit creeped out by Solitaire. because he knows so much about Tori
Mm.
as like, you know, so like he must be watching her,
Yes.
which to me creeps me out.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
I'm just creeped out.
That's
That's
fair.
where I'm at with Solitaire right now.
Yeah.
Um. Anyway, so I think we can safely say that like it's not a coincidence, and that obviously everything that Solitaire has done has been for Tori, but she is sort of yet to see it.
But she does this week, so that's
She
good.
does this week, yeah. So her and Michael are still talking, and Michael admits that he actually went to Charlie and asked if Tori was okay. And this made her a little bit uncomfortable. Not enough to like do anything, but she says she doesn't say it, but she thinks that she hates that people worry about her and that
Mm-hmm.
she's fine and she doesn't want people to worry.
Mm-hmm.
But like obviously we know she's not fine. And
Yeah.
it's good that people are worrying about her because people need to check on her.
Yes.
Like that time that Michael spent the day with her when she would have been in bed by herself.
Mm-hmm.
So
I also think it's like, in my book, she said like she wants to figure out what's wrong with her before anybody else does. So is that not in yours? Oh, so that's the reason why she didn't like that he was checking up on her.
right.
So
She also said that she's annoyed that people just sit there and watch people hurt others, obviously herself included. And I obviously think she's referring the whole thing to Ben. I think she feels guilty that she didn't step in and do
mm-hmm.
something.
Yeah.
And then she comments on how beautiful the snow is. Like their conversation is just ping pong all over the
Yes.
place. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, the snow is so beautiful," and he's like, "No, it's not." Michael's like, "No, I disagree." He thinks it's romantic, but it's cold.
Yeah.
I kind of agree with him. Like when you're looking
Yeah.
at it from inside, like we are right now, we're looking at the snow like fall. You could construe it in a romantic way, like, "Oh, it's so nice, all the snow falling, and it's nice and cozy and
All the
romantic."
snowflakes are different and like
Yeah,
they're so beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah.
But when you're out in it, it's cold as shit and it sucks.
Yeah. Like when we're done this and we have to go out and deal with how much snow is around my car.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the end of this whole conversation. And so then there's another day, and she's talking to Kent again about her Pride and Prejudice essay. About, and I guess he's asking her, like, what do you think the principal concern is? Like, is it marriage? Is it themselves? Like, I guess he's trying to, like, flesh out an idea for her on her essay.
I assume this was a new essay.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay.
Like I think he had her rewrite it and then he's giving her notes on the new one.
Gotcha.
And he starts asking her about her hobbies and like who her friends are. And I feel like this is weird. Like I don't get what he's getting at. And
I think he's just trying to be like, do you have any joy in life? Because you're very angry and depressed right now.
maybe.
Like I think it is all good intentioned. It's just he goes about it in a weird way, but I do think like he's trying.
I guess my problem with this scene and my problem in general is I feel like a lot of people see things happening with Tori and nobody is upfront and honest with her.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is like, hey, this is what I've noticed. This is what I think could be happening. This is what I think you should do. And maybe that's not appropriate, but like if he's beating around a bush and she doesn't like it.
Yes. I guess it's hard too because he only sees her in his English class, one would presume. But he's like, he was like, oh, your grades are gone down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is happening? Like giving her the option to come to him and be like, this is what's happening or something like that. So like, I don't know.
But, like, you also can't make a teenager talk, and if you are that concerned, that's when you contact home.
Yeah. Maybe he did.
Her parents didn't give a shit.
Yeah. Who knows?
Anyway, he tells her that her life might be easier with less friends, but the benefits of friends, like, outweigh sort of the easiness of not having them.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just tells her to snap out of it and that she's letting life pass her by. And I'm like, again, you're just telling her to, like, buck up, cheer up.
Yeah.
It's not helpful.
No, that's not a thing.
And she sort of thinks that at first that, like, he's talking about school and, like, grades and stuff, but he isn't. Like, he's talking in general.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets up to leave because she just doesn't have anything to say. And he tells her that nothing will change unless she decides to change it. And I don't disagree. Like, if she wants help, she needs to ask for help. But I also, what we said earlier, like, when you're in that headspace, it can be impossible to ask for help. And sometimes you need an adult, considering she is a minor, you need an adult to see it and to advocate on your behalf. So this adult sees it, should advocate on her behalf. If her dad sees it, he should be advocating on her behalf.
Yeah.
So anyway, she goes home and she's unhappy and upset. And her mom, like, tries to ask her what's wrong, but Tori, like, refuses to answer her. And she just goes, like, right to her room. Charlie comes in and asks her what's wrong, and then she breaks down. And she tells him that she can't stand how she is now and that she wishes her life was the way it was before Solitaire. Like, it was boring, and she wishes that it was that way. And I don't understand this bit. And I'm wondering if maybe you can provide your insight. So, like, what she's saying to me is she wants to go back, because, like, I refuse to think that she started with these, like, with this depressive state and, like, these dark thoughts when Solitaire arrived. It must have been happening for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I feel like the issue is that everything that has happened since Solitaire is making her question herself and sort of making her discover that maybe she's not okay. And, like, she wants to go back to her life the way it was before when she didn't realize that there was something wrong.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I feel like you're right. Like, she was still unhappy before Solitaire, but I feel like so much right now is, like, focused on Solitaire that she's like, oh, if Solitaire wasn't around, then I would still be friends with Becky and I wouldn't know Michael and I wouldn't be having so many mixed feelings about him and I wouldn't be constantly in an on again, off again friendship with him because she feels like she screws up all the time and, like, she doesn't really. So I kind of feel like it's like before Solitaire happened, she was just still unhappy, but maybe it just wasn't as hard in other areas of her life. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Ish. That's just
Ish.
what.
Yeah. She also, something else she says that I find really heartbreaking is that she says she knows that she's a piece of shit and, like, a poor excuse of a human, but she just wants things to go back to the way it was before. And she just, like, bawls into Charlie's arms. And I just feel like that's a really, like, awful way to feel.
Yeah, definitely.
And I feel bad that that's how she feels right now. I guess he stays with her for a while, but after he leaves, she reads her old diary from year 7, as it turns out. And she read it was actually, so they put the entry in the book, and it was really eye-opening because Tori seemed crazy different. So her and Becky were hanging out, and they went to the movies and had pizza, and were having a sleepover, and she was so happy and like excited and using exclamation marks for everything, and just seemed like quote unquote normal.
Yeah.
Like she wasn't bothered by all of these dark thoughts and by like all of these feelings that are not feelings. And yeah, she just seemed happy.
Mm-hmm.
So she puts the diary away. Then she just takes it back out and uses scissors to like cut and shred the whole thing into a big pile of confetti. I guess she doesn't want the reminder that she was happy at one point, but she thought it was like cliche and stupid, like these thoughts that she had.
Yeah, kind of cringy or something.
Yeah. So I guess the diary had been in a treasure box, and in the treasure box there was also like a little empty pot of bubbles that Becky had given her when they like ages ago. And Tori loved bubbles. Like she loves bubbles. And apparently earlier in the day, Solitaire had put a gif of a kid blowing bubbles on the blog. And this is when she realizes that Solitaire is definitely speaking to her, and it's up to her to respond. And I'm just like, you're only now realizing.
Yeah. I kind of get it. I'm like, she doesn't think that anybody notices her, and she doesn't feel seen. So I get her being like, it can't be about me. But I'm also like, it's obviously about you.
Yeah. Like, I think the Ben Hope thing is when you would, that's when you'd be like, oh, maybe it is.
Yeah. Which she did have that thought. And then she was like, oh my God, that's so selfish of me to think it's about me.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, that's your self-esteem talking. Mm-hmm. That's not. Yeah.
Yeah. She like reads some more diary entries from her most recent diary, and like she thinks everything is cliche and like typical teenager stuff. And she cries, and then she stops crying, and then she cries. So like she's really spiraling here. Like she's in a spiral for sure, and she thinks she's disgusting. She spends the afternoon, like evenings, scrolling through blogs, but like she refuses to write in her own. And she says she can't remember the last time she did that. But like, didn't she do it at the beginning of the book?
She did, yeah. But like the blog was like the one spot where she felt like she had people who were like her and that she connected with. So it's like, it's kind of sad that she hasn't been writing in her blog in a while.
Yeah. So yeah, she spends most of the weekend in bed until Sunday evening when Nick and Charlie guilt her into going to a music festival in January on a school night.
It's so weird.
So weird. Like, my parents would have not let me go to that.
No. At all.
Anyway, they go, and she feels guilty that she's been in bed all day, all weekend, so that's why she gets up to go, but she's still not in a great space. So they go, but Nick and Charlie like get there, like they drive her, and they want to get closer to the stage and actually like listen to the concert. So, but she doesn't, so they separate. She like just spends time wandering around the field, I guess it is. And she keeps seeing people from school, and she says she like waves at them sarcastically, like, oh, hey, you know.
Yeah.
Like everyone's like, oh my God. And she's just like, I'm not actually happy to be here. And then she notices there's like these flyers, like pieces of paper all over the ground, and she picks one up and it just says Friday. So that's she automatically thinks, oh, this is something Solitaire related. She then runs into her lot, like her friends, aka like Becky and Lucas and the rest of them. She tries to motion for Lucas to like follow her so that they could chat. And he just is like, nope. So she literally goes over and grabs him and pulls him into like a vacant sort of area, like a sparse area of field. And I love that the first thing she asks him is when he became a hipster. Like, she really cares that he's a hipster. And I'm just like, get over it. If he's a hipster, let him live his life.
Yeah. She really cares about this.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting because, like, he really cares that she's more serious than she used to be.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But he doesn't keep mentioning it.
No,
he mentioned it one time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, she tells him like that she waited for him at the coffee shop / the cafe for an hour, and he needs to tell her what's going on. And if he doesn't, maybe they should stop being friends. And I'm like, are they friends? Like,
yeah.
She literally spent the first half of the book avoiding him, and then now he spent the second half so far avoiding her.
Yeah.
So like,
and like, I feel like he got into part of her group because of her, and now he's like semi-popular, and like, but they never really ever were friends in this book. I mean, like, obviously they were friends before.
Yeah. Anyway, so she's like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be friends anymore. And he tells her it's hard to be around her, and she just doesn't understand. And he's like, you're so funny. And she's like, just dude, just honestly come out and say what you need to say. Because she is getting really frustrated that he cannot be straightforward with her.
Yeah.
And like, then she blows up and is like, seriously, if you hate me, you need to tell me so that I can just get over it and move on. And like,
yeah,
I think we all know that is not at all what he needs to tell her. But obviously that's where she goes with it. And then like, I feel like this is the moment when it should click for him. Shit, she's completely misreading the situation. I should tell her the truth.
Yeah.
But he doesn't.
No, not at all.
And it really, 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 really frustrates me. And this moment is when I really like actively dislike his character.
Yeah.
Like before I was sort of like take him or leave him. I could go either way. But this is when I actively start to dislike him because he sees how this is affecting her. And she starts to go a bit manic.
Yes.
During this moment. And he just stays silent. He doesn't say a thing. And to me, that is not okay. That is not acceptable.
No.
Like, if you see me starting to spiral about something between us, I know that you would then say, no, relax. Here's what's actually going on.
Yeah.
So, like,
I would talk to you about it before, I think, if this was our situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, can you imagine somebody letting all of these feelings out and going, like you said, being a bit manic and then just walking away?
Yeah. It's ridiculous. So she keeps going. And again, she's getting a bit manic. She starts to laugh. Like she's a bit hysterical. And she says she thinks that everybody in her life must have problems and that nobody is happy. And then she's like, just look at my brother. He's perfect. He seems like he doesn't have a care in the world, but like he has so many problems, and he has this problem with food and he hates food. And then she admits that, he actually hurt himself. And she goes on and on about how he wrote her an apology note. And like it was like a card and it had a cake on it, and he apologized to her because he hurt himself, and she just thinks that is ridiculous, and she thinks that is hysterical and hilarious. Like, why would he apologize to her for something that is not like, it's not something he would have to apologize for? And then she said she feels guilty because she knew there was something wrong, but she didn't tell anybody. And she said it makes her feel like dying And then she admits that, like, she's the one who found him in the bathroom with all that blood.
Yeah.
And I think actually this probably goes back to, remember, like, when the parents were out and we had that event in the kitchen with Charlie, and you were like, I'm surprised that she actually told the parents. I feel like this is probably part of why.
Yeah.
Because she knew about it. And then he ended up hurting himself. So now she doesn't want to keep quiet anymore.
Yeah. And I do think that, like, this incident with her brother was much worse. Like, I do think that he actually almost killed himself in that moment.
Yeah, so she's sort of like laughing and calling this whole thing like, isn't all of this hilarious, and laughing, which is why I'm saying she's like a bit manic, a bit like, you know. And Lucas isn't laughing, and he just walks away.
Good friend.
Right? Like, again, this is like, I understand if he has his own shit going on, but seriously, dude, you like sort your shit out.
Yep. Also, it makes no sense.
So she just stands there, and like all she can think about is that card that Charlie wrote her, like with the birthday cake on the front. Anyway, Charlie and Nick call her and say, hey, we're leaving, like, let's go. And she doesn't really say anything. And then all of a sudden, this is the one thing I don't really get. Like, they're like, we need to go. Like, something is going down. We need to leave. Like, Tori, you need to leave. Like, you need to go.
Yeah.
And they're really, like, insistent about it, as if they know something is going to happen.
I know.
And I don't understand why.
How do they know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in the exact same boat. I'm very confused.
Yeah. So she notices, like, I guess this field is close to like a river, and she sees a boy across the river, just like not staring at her, but just like alone. And she wonders who it is. She's like, is that Nick? But like she doesn't really figure it out. And then she notices that something is happening on the stage. Like, there's a big screen that was like projecting fun like pictures and patterns and stuff for the music. And then like a big red dot shows up, and then it expands until it's like the Solitaire symbol, which is like an upside down heart with a like circle around it or something, like a squiggly heart. And then this like weird voice starts talking. So obviously it's Solitaire, and it's like, hello, Solitarians. And like the crowd goes wild. And I guess she had gravitated toward the crowd when the LED screen like changed, because she wanted to see what was going on. But now she's like getting swept in it, and because people are like going crazy in a good way, they're like, woo! And she's like, no, I don't like this. So she's like turns around and like fighting against, you've been to a concert, like fighting against the crowd in order to get out of there. And then she sees that person standing across the river again, and she just thinks it's weird that they're just standing over there by themselves. And Solitaire then like tells everyone with the weird garbled voice that they're planning a special event at Higgs this Friday, and to like be on your guard, and that it's going to be the biggest operation yet. And it says like their catchphrase, like, patience kills. And all of a sudden a bunch of fireworks go off, and I will say, I find that this moment really came out of left field for me. So a bunch of fireworks go off, and people are like, woo! But then I guess they're going off so close to the crowd that some people get hurt because they're getting hit with fireworks.
Yeah.
So like people are actually catching fire. So like
getting
injured. So like most people though are still like, woo! And then only a few people are like, ah!
Yeah.
So Tori makes it to the edge of the crowd and runs into Michael, who's drinking tea from a flask, which I sort of appreciate.
Yeah,
I like it. And they're just like chatting really quick, and then all of a sudden a firework makes its way to Tori and is like heading right for her, like aiming right for her, and it's about to hit her. And Michael is like yelling at her, like, jump in the river, Tori, jump in the river. And like she jumps in the river, like right before she gets hit in the face with the firework. And it's very like action movie.
Yeah, I guess. Well, in mine, she was kind of like, why bother?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Like, I kind of said I wanted to die anyway, so may as well just stand here.
Yeah, she was very slow getting out of the way. Like she was questioning whether she should let the firework hit her.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she does jump in the river, but not before her arm catches fire from the firework, and it burns through her coat and her sweater and her shirt and like burns her arm. And her and Michael are just like in the river, and she's in shock because she's just talking about like she doesn't even realize that she's swimming, for one. And then she also doesn't even realize that she's like wading out of the water.
Yeah.
Like she's completely disassociated with her body.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's like, Michael is like there, and she's just like, I almost died. Like, I really think it's like clicking that she really could have been seriously hurt.
Yeah.
They're looking at the field and like how chaotic it is because more people have been injured and more people are starting to be like, oh shit, let's go. And she's like looking at him, and he's like, we need to go to the hospital for your arm. And she just is looking at him, and she's like, and she just tells him that she was looking for him. And he admits to her that he says, Tori Spring, I've been looking for you forever. And it's just so sweet.
So sweet.
And they just like, I guess they just hold each other, and she passes out from the cold because again, this is January and she had to jump in a river. And
they're still in the fucking river. I'm like, get out of the river.
They're on the bank.
Yeah.
They've made it to the bank. But like still, she like passes out from the cold and probably from the shock of almost dying and from having a burn on her arm. She said it was really, really painful.
Yeah.
And
Michael's for some reason in a like t-shirt.
Yeah. He's weird. And she realizes right before she passes out that if she had died, she would rather be a ghost than go to heaven. And I almost feel like this feels like almost a little bit of a turning point. Just if we're stopping here, this feels like a turning point because she's realizing she would rather stay with these people and this person than move on.
Yeah.
Which is progress for her, I think.
I think so. I agree with that.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's where we are stopping today.
Yeah. So if you do want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in any of our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions, you can email us at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com. And be sure to check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Coffee and Co-Read.
So next week we'll be finishing Solitaire chapters 10 to after. So make sure to follow along. And if you're enjoying our little chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you find content. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next page.